The email came in just after 3 p.m. on the Friday before Christmas. Subject: Reallocation of Project Integrity Lead Role. From Jared Cooper. CC Melissa Grant, HR, Director Newman. I clicked it open, confused. The project was mine. I had built every dashboard, every anomaly map, every line of script that traced how internal data could be corrupted by unauthorized access. I had presented it to legal, to IT, even Melissa, twice. And now it said, effective immediately, Jared Cooper will assume lead responsibility on project integrity for Q1. Nora Sanders will continue in a support capacity. My fingers froze on the trackpad. Support capacity? Before I could move, a Slack ping followed. Melissa. Just 4 words. Let's debrief Monday. M. That was how she handled it. Stripped me of 6 months of work and left a trailing period like a stone on my chest. I stared at my screen, breath short. My office cubicle felt suddenly smaller, like the air had condensed. Across the aisle, Jared leaned back in his chair, sipping peppermint tea like it was any other Friday. He caught my eye and gave me a slight, smug nod, like this had been inevitable. I didn't reply. I didn't trust what might come out of my mouth. I powered down my screen, grabbed my coat, and walked straight out the front entrance of Coleman Analytics. My daughter's Christmas party was that evening, and if I couldn't be recognized at work, I'd at least show up where it mattered more. The Sanders Christmas gathering was always a polished affair. Deborah's house sparkled like a page from a Pottery Barn catalog. 7-foot tree, gold garland, artisanal charcuterie boards, perfect on the surface, cold underneath. This year was no different. We arrived at 6:30 sharp. Lena held a handmade card in her mittened hands. She had spent 3 nights on it, drawing Deborah beside a glittery fireplace. "Merry Christmas, Grandma," it said in curling gold marker. "I hope she likes it," Lena whispered in the car, her cheeks pink with anticipation. "She didn't really talk to me last year." "She'll love it," I lied, forcing a smile. Inside, the house buzzed with laughter. Deborah greeted Eli with a kiss on the cheek and gave me her standard once-over. "Oh, flats again. You really believe in comfort, don't you, Nora?" I let it slide. I always did. Lena hung her coat neatly and tucked her card under her arm like it was precious cargo. We drifted into the living room. Cousins from Indiana. Melissa with her perfect makeup and 3 equally perfect children. Jared was there too. Yes, that Jared. Melissa's office buddy, and apparently now my professional executioner. Eli leaned close and whispered, "Don't think about it tonight." "I'm trying," I muttered. The gifts were stacked in curated piles beneath the tree. Deborah believed in wrapping paper color codes: gold for kids, silver for adults, blue for family friends. Deborah clapped twice near the fireplace. "All right, everyone, let's do presents before dessert. Kids first." Lena beamed. Her curls bounced with excitement. She nestled on the rug, cradling her card. Deborah picked up the first box. "Connor!" The room applauded. Paper flew. "Emma! Tyler! Lexi!" Lena clapped for each name. I counted as the pile shrank. 10, then 8, then 5. Still no Lena. Eli's hand tensed around mine. "Maybe hers is hidden behind the tree," he whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. Deborah picked up a flat, gold-wrapped box. "For Logan," she said. Logan wasn't even blood. He was a cousin's stepson. I sat forward. Lena's card trembled slightly in her hand, but she kept smiling. That polite, polite smile. Then Deborah dusted off her hands and turned to Walter. "Well, that's all of them." My stomach dropped. Lena looked down at her lap. She folded her hands like she'd been taught in church. She said nothing, but I saw the twitch in her jaw, the shallow breath she took. I was about to stand, about to say something that would scorch the room. But Eli stood first. Without a word, he crossed the room, reached behind one of the stockings, and pulled out a plain white envelope. Every eye turned to him. He looked at Deborah, then at Lena. "This," he said calmly, "was supposed to be opened last." The music stopped. Lena looked up, confused. Her fingers closed around the envelope slowly, like it might vanish. The air changed. The room had been warm. Now it was brittle. Melissa cleared her throat. Deborah's expression cracked just slightly, like a mirror under stress. "What's that?" Walter asked. Eli didn't answer. He just stepped back and sat beside me, his face unreadable. My chest tightened. My voice was shaking, but I kept it low. "You knew." He nodded. "She wasn't on the list," he said simply. "I saw it in Deborah's planner. I asked about it. She said it was a draft. I knew it wasn't." "And you didn't tell me?" "I had to make it right my own way." Lena held the envelope to her chest. I looked across the room. Melissa pretended to sip her wine. Jared was scrolling his phone. No one dared speak first, not even Deborah. Let me say this as clearly as I can. That night changed everything. Not because of the gift, but because my daughter, 9 years old, had learned something most people spend their whole lives trying to grasp. That being left out isn't just painful, it's political, calculated. That envelope wasn't just a ticket, it was a counterpunch, quiet, precise, impossible to ignore, and it was only the beginning. If you've ever been passed over after giving your all, type 1. Monday morning hit like a slap. I logged into my workstation, bleary-eyed from the weekend's chaos, only to find a new flagged message from HR compliance. Subject: Preliminary concern, improper use of internal communications. Attachment: chat excerpts, email thread, draft report, screenshots, CC, Melissa Grant, Jared Cooper, Legal Affairs. My stomach dropped. I opened the PDF. It was a selection of my internal Slack messages, cherry-picked and stitched together, suggesting I had been discussing confidential project materials outside approved channels. Words taken out of context, screenshots that felt wrong. One message had been time-stamped during a meeting I never missed. Jared. I knew it instantly. He had access and motive. Melissa's name on the CC line confirmed it. Her fingerprints were always clean, but her intentions never were. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I read every line slowly, each one carving out more of the ground beneath my feet. The final paragraph requested a discretionary review of role performance and access level, a bureaucratic way of saying they were looking for a reason to get rid of me. I closed the email. My hands trembled. I opened my drawer and pulled out the Iceland itinerary. Still folded, still pristine. It was the only thing in my orbit that hadn't been tampered with. The moment Eli had handed Lena that envelope, the entire living room had gone still. It hadn't been fancy, just plain white paper, sealed neatly, but it shifted the air like someone had lit a flare in a foggy forest. Lena had opened it with care, peeling the flap like it might rip the world. Inside, 2 plane tickets, round trip, first class, Iceland, 1 adult, 1 child, and a handwritten note. To my daughter Lena, for the girl who brings light wherever she goes. Let's chase the northern lights. Love, Dad. Lena's eyes lit up like the tree behind her. She whispered, "We're really going?" Eli knelt beside her, smile quiet. "We are. Just you and me. Aurora Borealis, hot cocoa, snowmobiles, all of it." The room didn't breathe, not for several long seconds. Melissa blinked rapidly, holding her wineglass too tight. Walter coughed into his sleeve. "Deborah?" Deborah stared at her lap like it might offer a distraction. But Lena? She bloomed. She clutched the tickets with both hands and leaned into Eli's side like a satellite finally pulling into orbit. I caught Melissa mouthing something to her husband. He shrugged and looked away. That moment I knew. We had broken script. And some people never forgive you for that. Back at work, I spent the day combing through file history. Jared's access logs didn't show anything overt, but the metadata on my original reports? It had been changed. Timestamp inconsistencies, comments removed. I knew it because I had kept the offline backup. The missing remarks? I had printed them 3 weeks ago. I walked into legal with the folder. They smiled politely, promised to look into it, then immediately sent a memo scheduling my review. That afternoon, Melissa dropped by my cubicle. No knocking. "Hey," she said, tone syrupy. "Rough day?" "Don't," I replied. Her smile didn't flinch. "I just meant, maybe if you had shared the presentation earlier, things wouldn't have felt so escalated." Jared edited my work. She shrugged. "I'm not sure what you're trying to imply, but this isn't a good look, Nora." "You mean standing up for myself?" "I mean making this messy." I stood. "You left my daughter off that list, just like you left me off this project." Melissa's eyes narrowed. "Don't confuse personal insecurity with professional accountability." "Oh, I'm very clear on the difference," I said. She leaned in, just enough for her perfume to feel invasive. "People who make scenes rarely stay long. And you? You've made quite a few lately." She left before I could respond. That night, Lena traced Iceland's map with a yellow marker at the kitchen table. She was planning their route, Reykjavik to Vik, to the black sand beaches. Eli handed me a cup of tea. "She hasn't stopped talking about it." "She needed to feel seen," I whispered. "So did you," he said gently. "I saw what happened with Jared." "You didn't tell me you saw Deborah's list." He nodded. "I knew what she was doing. I just didn't know how far she'd go." I stared at the kitchen window, where a soft flurry began to fall. "I think she'll go as far as we let her." Eli's jaw set. Then we stopped letting her. The next morning, Deborah called. Eli didn't answer. Later, she texted, "Wish you'd coordinated with us. Would have made the evening smoother." Smoother? You excluded a child. Instead of replying, Eli drafted a letter, removing Lena from the family trust. He made a new one privately, naming her as beneficiary in a separate custodial plan he controlled. His note to the lawyer was short: protect her from conditional affection. That same day, I submitted a formal request for forensic audit of the altered file logs. Jared smirked when the notice was posted. He thought it was performative. He didn't know I had backup print copies, hard evidence, unaltered. I sent a second, confidential copy to Director Newman. At dinner, Lena asked, "Do you think Grandma forgot me on purpose?" Eli froze. I leaned in. "I think she made a choice. And now we've made one too." Lena blinked, then nodded. She held her Iceland envelope tight. "Then I'm glad it's just me and Dad." That was the moment I realized. We hadn't just shifted the room that night. We'd shifted her story. If you've ever had someone try to dim your light, but you chose to shine anyway, type 2. Tuesday morning began with another ambush. I stepped into the conference room for what I thought was a routine weekly strategy check-in. Instead, I was greeted by silence, and Jared already seated at the head of the table, sipping coffee like he owned the building. Melissa stood near the whiteboard, arms folded, lips twitching into a tight smile. "Thanks for joining, Nora," she said, motioning for me to sit. Something was wrong. There were too many folders on the table. A legal rep I barely recognized sat in the corner, flipping through a binder. HR was there too, trying to look neutral. Melissa cleared her throat. "We've decided to move up the review timeline on project integrity due to some procedural concerns," she began. I blinked. "You mean the false metadata Jared injected into the logs?" Jared didn't even flinch. "That allegation was reviewed and found inconclusive. IT confirmed the logs were unprotected. Anyone could have modified them." I looked directly at the legal rep. "I submitted the original files 3 weeks ago. Hard copies, time-stamped, not a single comment out of place." He opened his folder lazily. "We're still reviewing those." Melissa interjected, "In the meantime, we're suggesting you take a 2-week leave, just to clear the air while the process finishes." "A forced leave?" I asked flatly. "Not forced," Jared said too smoothly. "Encouraged." It was a trap, designed to isolate me, dismantle my access, disconnect me before I could finish proving they'd set me up. I stood. If I walk out today, it'll be with my documentation, my lawyer's number, and a call to the ethics committee. Melissa's smile didn't even falter. "If that's the route you want to take, Nora, we understand. but you'll want to think about the long-term relationships you're impacting. I walked out without saying another word. That night, Lena fell asleep early with a flashlight under her pillow, still reading about Icelandic geysers. I sat beside Eli on the couch, staring at the muted TV screen. He looked over. They escalated it? I nodded. Melissa staged a mini tribunal. Jared just sat there acting like it wasn't all planned. You want me to say something to HR? He asked. No, that makes it look like I can't fight for myself. He paused. But you're exhausted. I am, I whispered. But this is the last time anyone gets to pretend I don't belong. I picked up my phone. There was a message from Deborah. Again. We're having the Sanders Foundation dinner this weekend. Please, RSVP, formal attire. I stared at it. No apology, no acknowledgement of Christmas Eve, just another summons to perform belonging. Eli must have seen my expression. You don't have to go. I want to, I replied. I want her to see that we're not the ones who should feel small. The Sanders Foundation dinner was Deborah's favorite event. It was less about charity and more about social capital, the who's who of the community, wine-stained praise and sugar-dipped judgments. When we entered the ballroom, Melissa was already there, dazzling in emerald silk. Jared hovered near her elbow like an accessory. Deborah was holding court near the silent auction table. Eli, she called, arms wide, and Nora. Her tone dropped half an octave for my name. I kept my expression neutral. Lena wasn't with us. She was with my sister that evening, safe from the theater of performance. Deborah led us to our seats, round table near the back. Not family placement, a message. Eli's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. He hadn't, not much, since Christmas. It wasn't distance, it was deliberation. A kind of silent calculus that burned beneath his calm face. Midway through the dinner, Melissa leaned over. Jared tells me legal still hasn't confirmed your files. Might be time to let this one go. I stared at her. You're enjoying this. I'm protecting the company. You're protecting a liar. You know he changed the report. She sipped her wine. Even if he did, no one cares. Not really. You should think about that. The night dragged on. Speeches, applause, a silent auction for a vintage wine basket that Deborah just had to win. I excused myself to the restroom and ended up in the hallway near the coat check, alone until Melissa followed. You know, she said softly, loyalty has a shelf life. I turned. So does manipulation. Her smile cracked. I've been patient with you, for Eli's sake, but you're not helping him anymore. That sounds like a threat. It's a warning. I stepped closer. You left my daughter off a gift list and helped a man steal my project. That's not loyalty, that's sabotage. She leaned in. You don't belong in this family. I didn't blink. Then stop pretending I ever wanted to. When I got home, I filed the final whistleblower complaint, full documentation, off-site logs, and 3 statements from my former team who had seen Jared editing code without permission. I sent it directly to the board's internal compliance officer. The next morning, I received the automatic confirmation. Complaint ID 74993B. Status pending independent review. At breakfast, Lena asked if the northern lights really changed color. Eli answered, sometimes they shimmer, green, purple, even red if you're lucky. I want to see red, she said. He smiled. Then we'll wait for red. If someone once told you to stay silent for the sake of peace, but that peace never included you, type 3. The email hit my inbox at 7:41 a.m. sharp. Subject, formal notice, investigation, resolution and disciplinary action. From Compliance Board, Internal Affairs. Attachment, findings, complaint, number 74993B. My fingers hovered over the mouse for a beat too long. I hadn't even finished my first sip of coffee. Click. The PDF opened with stark clarity. After independent review and metadata forensics, it has been determined that Mr. Jared Cooper deliberately altered internal files to remove authorship trace and falsify workflow history. Effective immediately, Mr. Cooper has been suspended pending termination review. Ms. Sanders is fully exonerated. Access and leadership responsibilities on Project Integrity are reinstated. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I exhaled, not with relief, but with quiet fury. This should never have required a battle. I had been right the whole time, and still, I had to bleed to prove it. I printed the document and slid it into a blue folder marked Truth. I would keep it, just like Lena had kept her envelope. Because some things aren't just files. They're proof you weren't crazy. You were betrayed. At home, Lena was packing her tiny carry-on bag, laying out thermal socks and sketching glaciers in a notepad. The trip was 3 days away. She had counted everyone. "I'm bringing my red bow," she said. "The same one from Christmas, for pictures in the snow." "Good idea," I said, kissing her head. She didn't know how deep that bow ran in our story now. A symbol of silence, then defiance. In the kitchen, Eli was reading something on his phone. Deborah's name lit up on the screen. She'd sent 4 texts and left 2 voicemails. He didn't open any of them. "She knows," I said. "She always knew," he replied. "She just never thought we'd do anything about it." That evening, I stepped into the garage and pulled down a dusty box labeled Legal and Trust Docs. Eli joined me quietly. Together, we reviewed the original Sanders family trust paperwork. Lena was listed as a secondary contingent beneficiary. In other words, invisible until needed. Eli made a few calls. By morning, he had transferred her into a separate custodial trust, completely independent of the Sanders estate. Deborah would never touch her future again. "She won't like this," I said, watching him e-sign the final authorization. "She doesn't have to," Eli replied. We didn't attend the Sunday brunch Deborah hosted. Instead, we took Lena sledding near Lakewood Park. Wind slapped our faces, but Lena's laughter cracked through the cold like fireworks. Mid-run down the slope, she turned to us, cheeks bright, and shouted, "This is better than any Christmas!" Eli grinned. "And we haven't even left for Iceland yet." Later, sipping cocoa from a thermos, Lena asked, "Do you think Grandma will still want my card someday?" "I think she'll want a lot of things," I said carefully. "But you don't owe her anything she didn't earn." Lena paused. "Then I'm keeping it forever." And just like that, she closed the chapter herself. The next day at work, Melissa appeared at my cubicle. No smile this time, just a clipped, forced professionalism. "I assume you saw the update," she said. "Jared's removal." "Yes," I replied. She leaned in slightly. "The board is asking questions. They want to know why it escalated without internal mediation. Because you ignored every internal warning I gave. You went nuclear, Nora. I went honest." Her eyes narrowed. "You've made some powerful people uncomfortable." I tilted my head. "They should have been uncomfortable a long time ago." She straightened. "You'll never be part of this family, you know." "Melissa," I said softly, "you're right." She blinked. "I'm not part of your version of family. I don't exist to keep secrets and keep quiet. That's not love. That's control dressed up in pearls." She stared at me like she didn't understand the words. "I hope someday," I added, "you realize Lena deserved better than your silence." I walked away before she could respond. The day of the flight came. Lena woke up before dawn, already dressed in a fleece-lined hoodie and holding her envelope tight. "I packed my card," she said, "for my suitcase." "Good," Eli said. "It belongs with your real memories." At the airport, just as we reached the gate, Deborah called again. Eli stared at the screen. He didn't press decline. He let it ring until it stopped. "She's going to rewrite her version of the story," I said. "I know," he nodded. "But this time we're not in it." On the plane, Lena sat by the window, eyes wide, cheeks resting against the glass. "Mom?" she asked. "Do you think the stars will look different there?" "They already do," I said. "You just haven't seen them yet." She opened the envelope and peeked at the tickets again. Then she smiled like someone who finally understood the difference between being chosen and being convenient. And I smiled too, because for the first time in a long time, we were flying towards something that no one, not Jared, not Melissa, not Deborah, could take away, not power, not legacy, not this gift. If you've ever had to fight just to be seen, type 4.